I think we definitely need stronger animal protection laws. I mean, the thing about mandating spay and neuter would be it puts the responsibility on the city to offer affordable spay
Oh,
neuter.
yes. That's what
You can't
and they don't want that, I assume.
can't afford to follow, right? So, and then they rolled out the voucher program in LA as a way to make it possible because they have two voucher programs, one for pets, one for feral cats. So yeah, do you feel like that's a model that would work here, or would you like to see ACC expand their service to include free spay neuter? Or like what kind of model do you think would work in New York if there were funds?
I think that sometimes for people it needs to be free, particularly in some of the neighborhoods that we know. To be honest with you, the awful thing is that private spay neuter is so out of control in New York as well. I mean, if you look at some other places, you pay so much less. So it's very much a profit business here. But even for some people, even spending $50, be like, I'm just not going to spend it. I'm not going to pay that. So I think for some of the areas that we're dealing with, I think it would need to be free for them to do it. But if it's effective, the long term effect of that would be so much better than what we're doing now, which is closing our eyes against it and not acknowledging that we have a big problem out there. What do you think, Denise?
I agree. I mean, I think we were heading in the right direction when we had those spay neuter vans that used to come to the neighborhood, and we were getting things done. People were like, "Oh, it is free. Okay, fine. I may have to get up at 5 in the morning," but they were doing it because the services were free. And I feel like that worked. I believe 100% it needed to be expanded, not disbanded, which is apparently where we are right now. And now they're cherry picking certain zip codes, and it's like, who decides the zip code? And why is it only that zip code? We're looking at maybe 3 vans at the APCA where there's spay neuter for pets. And those are the same 3 zip codes. You have to prove that you live in that zip code. And how is that zip code different from my zip code? And if we can find some kind of incentive program. Some of these neighborhoods are tough. I've had bottles thrown at me from the roof just because I wanted to get a colony under control. And we need protection. We need protection. And I do think that there should be some kind of incentive program. Bring these animals in, if, maybe just some food. Oh, my pit bull had 3 litters and I can't afford to get her spayed. And, oh, well, here's a couple of bags or a voucher for some food. Get a Purina to donate. Some kind of incentive to help alleviate this load.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we do need a lot of creative solutions. And when I look at organizations, what we could tap into in New York City, I think there's some organizations doing a lot with a little, like Cat Cafe and Flatbush Cats. Then there's other organizations doing a little with a lot, like ASPCA.
Yeah. They're funded by the city, are they not? Are they funded? I think they're given so much per animal or something. I don't know if that's true.
They do get some grants, but they also donate to the city sometimes. So there's a weird back and forth. I think like we could have a whole other discussion about ASPCA financing and what they get from the city, what they give, but they are the ones that are closest to the city. If there was going to be expanded spay-neuter programs, the city would probably lean towards expanding through the ASPCA. I honestly think ASPCA has started being viewed in such a negative light by rescuers because of how their fundraising has been breaking records every year while they services. And they can say that there's a vet shortage. It's absolutely true. But other organizations are figuring out how to work around that.
Very true. And they closed Glendale. I mean, a lot of people didn't want to go out there, but you always knew you could get something done there. And now that's gone. I mean, it's like they're shutting everything down. Denise said there's like when they were sending the trucks out, you felt like something was happening, but it really feels like they're the only ones that are doing anything. And what they're doing is so little.
If you look at our situation, I don't know how much you know about what we're doing. I have a cat sanctuary in my basement. My landlord was kind enough to give me the space. It's a dead space. The boiler doesn't work anymore, and it's a pretty good space. I took it, transformed it, brought in cats that I believe were at risk because there are not a lot of feeders. So I'm like, these guys are at risk and I'm going to bring them in. They're semi-feral. They can live here for the rest of their lives. They're healthy. I have a vet come. And then we expanded it to a holding station where the new cats come in. And again, same landlord, he realized the benefit of my sanctuary because when we got a little bit of press and the people in the building were like, oh my goodness, this is when the mice stop coming through the walls, or this is when the rats stop coming, because there are cats in the basement. And then my landlord, now it's money in his pocket because he's not paying for those exterminators anymore. And now his garbage areas are clear because we've got shelters out in the back for the cats and the alleys. And my guy is great. Now we've got the holding station, and we've got another building that's seen a significant reduction in the rats, the mice, even the bugs. And to me, even if it can be a tax write-off for my landlord, you can see the domino effect of other supers in the area. They talk to each other, and they're like, really? You have that many cats over there, and that's all you need to control the rat population? Okay. And then they're opening up rooms, and they're supers, and maybe they only have 2 cats, but they're going, okay, I don't want babies, and can we do this? Can we make it work? And it's working, but it's on such a small scale. But again, the problem is, how do we get them vetted? How do we get them? The other thing is, you don't want them, you start bringing in cats, you don't want them spraying, because you go from a rat population to the smell that no one wants, or the fighting and the howling at night that you don't want to hear. And they're teaching each other, no, they're not fighting. Look at them. They're just hanging, because we were able to get them spayed and neutered.
Actually, we get a lot of people who complain in the whole of Washington Heights about yowling, basically behavior that's around mating, that's actually keeping New Yorkers awake at night. And then people want them gone, but it's, oh, if we could just work with the city to get them fixed. I would love to see us do it by neighbor, like a proper sweep. Let's get these done, let's get them vetted. Let's go on to the next lot, let's get them vetted and fixed. And as Denice said, like, the building's starting to recognize that cats can be good and work with the buildings and the owners, instead of it being something that's, we don't want to talk about it, but and the smell is everywhere. And there's so much that difference it can make with getting cats, TNR. It just makes such a big difference to everybody.
We had that one orange cat that the super loved him. He's, oh, wow, he's really out here. He's doing his thing. He's hunting, but he smells. And I'm like, we need to get him neutered. And then we had taken all the girls, because you want to take the girls first. And he wanders off to some other area where the girls were. And a year later, he's 3 blocks away. And we're like, but now he's neutered. He turned out to be friendly. But if he were, let's say, a semi-feral or a feral, once we neuter him, he's going to stay put. And that's I went back to that original super, and I'm like, FYI, we got your orange boy. He's inside. He's friendly, and we got him vetted, and he now lives in a home. They name their cats. They know their cats, and they're getting educated to the point where I hear fighting, something's going on. And then they reach out to us, and yeah, we can take them, but now we're looking at months.
Yeah.
Right. And that's
get fixed.
Like I said, we have this great holding station. We don't want to bring a cat in there and leave them crated for a month or 3 months, because we can't.
That's another thing. Yeah.
Not ideal for the cat. We want to get turnover quick. There's not a lot of spaces I would return a cat to in New York City, but the supers, they're starting to smarten up, and you see the little holes in the doors where the cats are allowed in, and they're starting to go, oh, I want them here to annihilate the rat population. So that means we don't feed them. That means that the rats are there.
That's totally one of the most upsetting things in New York. They think if they don't feed them, instead they've got these weak cats. That's a lot. I want education as well, because New York is all about the buildings. With the big apartment buildings, if you can educate people about spay-neuter, about how big a difference it makes to communities, about feeding cats and taking care of them, they're in our lives. They're not going anywhere. Let's take care of them, and they'll take care of us. I think it's just human. It's just the right thing to do. And it's just New York City. Come on. I really feel that so strongly. I'm shocked by how bad it is here. Shocked.
Like, I go back to my holding station. I'm like, well, when you have it set up the way that we have our setup, it would be nice for us to get these transport vans. Well, that's the other thing the ASPCA does. I understand that there's a lottery for rescuers to get transport vans, but should that same rescuer get that transport van every month, twice a month for years and years? They do indeed have a vet shortage, and why can't we share those vans? Why can't that van be in my neighborhood for just one van every 3 months? I don't need it every month. I mean, I would love to have it every month, but it's not feasible because there are so many of us that are in a bad place. Julie mentioned Glendale. I Uber to Glendale, and I will Uber to Glendale if I have 2 cats, because it's worth it to me. But that's in Washington Heights. You're looking at it with a pet Uber, and now if I'm lucky enough to get a transporter, but a lot of times we don't have those spots in advance. I will hover on my ASPCA page and pray that there might be a cancellation. And that's basically the only way I'm getting spots is if another rescue will cancel.
And
then
this is one spot, one cat in this massive city.
and then you have to, for the Uber to get out there, and you have to go back and forth twice. Okay, now they have a spot in the Bronx, but can we open that up? My biggest thing is with the setup that we have and the volume that we now have and the amount of cats that are still out there, and we're just sitting on these females going, we can't bring her in because what are we going to do with her? And you're just watching them give birth. Why can't we share that transport van? Why can't they all move? What determines that one rescuer to have that unlimited? It's not fair. It isn't fair. And it's not the problem.
Rescuers are working in the most resource deprived atmosphere I think that I've ever seen. And I've been doing this for 13 years and other people have been doing it for longer. But I remember over 10 years ago, there used to be transport you could reserve. I remember it being Mayor's Alliance for Animals or something, or it was under Bloomberg. And you could reserve transport as long as you planned it out ahead, sometimes just a few days in advance. And that doesn't exist anymore. I don't know when they phased that out. But yeah, transport. I mean, rescue work is a logistical nightmare. You need transport, holding space, you need spay-neuter spots. And when one of those three things is not available or harder to get, it just really puts a wrinkle in. That doesn't even include you staying up all night to try to trap the cat and getting the trap. A lot of things have to come together for this to work. And the city needs to play a role in offering some of those resources.
I agree. They started this voucher program for rescuers where you can go to a private vet, but it's still really hard to arrange and still expensive. During the pandemic, actually, I wrote to 30 private vets in New York and I asked, can you give me one or two low-cost spay-neuters? I already heard back from one, and that's because they had a trainee vet that they wanted to use. Because PCA completely shut down. The only thing we had is a lot of people were adopting cats, who some of them since I think have thrown them out, but everybody wanted a cat at that point. And I agree. I think it's just again, as you were saying, the resources are that everybody has to pull towards this one or two spots. Or Denice taking a car out to Glendale, which is no longer there for two cats. The energy that goes in for just a small amount, but to be able to do this effectively, to be much more better, it is a proper project management thing that can be done. And actually would look good for the city if they could say that they did this. Look what we've achieved. We were able to do something significant for something that affects everybody in New York.
Yeah, supposedly New York City is a progressive city with innovative ideas. And supposed to be like a leading city in the country and in the world. And for us to be so backward in animal welfare, it seems really bizarre.
I feel like it's a hidden problem from Midtown and downtown and places like that, where when I lived there, I didn't know about any of this. And then you go to Queens, the Bronx, Brooklyn, Washington Heights, Lower Harlem, and you just go like, where am I? Where's in New York that I saw the skyscrapers and like all the shows that I watched, the TV, the movies before I moved here? What happened? There's all these animals running around that are not being cared for, that are hungry and injured and in such bad conditions. And then poor people paying their own money to feed them. It's just all very sad and completely unnecessary and totally fixable.
Yeah, the problem lives too far away from the power centers. And that's how it's not being solved.
So true. That's what I really want to say.
Have the schools get involved for volunteers and maybe get credit the colleges, the high schools, and teach them, go back to the education and start from the beginning. Teach them.
And use the vets, use trainee vets at some of the schools in New York and any of the surrounding areas. I think it's very sad that I mean, I know there's apparently a vet shortage, but I've also heard that a lot of people at the ASPCA, the vets are unhappy there because they do this rotation system where they're forced to do different types of surgeries that there's not their favorite. And so a lot of them don't want to stay. But I heard that. I don't know if it's true. But I'm thinking, like, why can't you retain your vets as well?
I heard it was a money issue also, that they don't want to pay the vet.
Yet they're raising money everywhere. When animals are suffering because of that, I mean, I think pay away. But when you're actually not, paying vets to stay and incentivizing them, and that is actually what's making a difference, you really need to look at your business model.
To think about that. But anyway, I will stay here. Come on up here. You want to end the show with me? Come here.
Okay.
I want to get Mickey to come in here, Mickey Rourke, my cat from 165th Street. But oh, look at that. God,
This is
I
laughable.
can't take it. I can't take it. I have a love of black cat that is just, oh, I just love them so much.
He's actually from Puppy Kitty NYC. He's the cat that had no fur. I don't know if you followed any of their stories. Have you?
No, I don't know that story.
Back in, it's looking good now. So anyway,
Look at
so
him now. Oh, I have to say that the cat that got me into cat rescue was a cat that came from 110th Street, living in one of these electric power station areas, barely surviving. All his fur was missing on either side. He was so thin. Somebody rescued him. I took him in and all his fur grew back. And he's the reason I do cat rescue, I say, because I knew he was out there and he'd been dumped as a kitten. He was so desperate for human love that he would climb up on you the minute you came home and just cling to you. And I was like, someone put him outside and someone hadn't rescued him. And that's the story of so many cats out there. And I want to say the fact that you got a cat that had no fur and it grew back, that it tells you just the joy of what it is that we try to do.
yeah,
Like they're the good stories. It's very hard, but they're the good stories.
yeah, we think he might have been shaved. But anyway,
They grew back
looking-
probably. Let me see if I've got one. The love of my life and the center of my world. This is boy, I don't know if you can see here, but Oscar. He's the one I was just telling you about.
Oh,
You said the bone came to me. Yeah, it's skull and bones. He's the reason I do this because of him. He was the gateway drug, I say.
My gateway cat was, again, I was rescuing all dogs beforehand, and I was walking across Amsterdam Avenue, and my dogs kept pulling me back to the street. I'm like, what are you doing? You want to go to the park? And I'm like, I go to Amsterdam Avenue, and there's a kitten dipped in some sort of commercial adhesive and left in the intersection with a can of food. He couldn't move. He was glued to the street, to the asphalt. Picked him up, took my shirt off, wrapped him up, took him home, and went to one of these Washington Heights vets, and they were like, oh, we have to amputate. And I'm like, you haven't even x-rayed. I was 19. I'm like, you haven't even x-rayed him. How are you just gonna start taking him to work with me and I'm baby powder and pulling all of his fur off to get this stuff off of him. And 21 years later, I just put him down. Yeah. But
I'm sorry.
he was solid. Even the people at the AMC, when I brought him in, I'm like, something's going on. He's acting peculiar. Because this is the jerk that would get up in the middle of the night and have all of the kittens that I just rescued just there next to the apartment on here. He was an older cat, but you would never know it. And then I knew when he passed, it was going to be quick because he was so. The AMC were like, "How old is he?" I'm like, "I can show you date stamped pictures. I know exactly." And he was so solid, and they fought like hell for him. We all, but again, he was
21. That's good. 21 is amazing.
Yeah. Fast forward to the 20 I have now, though.
Well, one is never enough.
I tell you, I tell people, I'm like, hey, I have a black cat. There's 6 of them there, but you don't see the one. It's a Chanel. It's really, yeah, it is what it is.
all right. Well, thank you for being on the show.